Say, has anybody heard of that new illness that's going around? No, I'm not talking about the coronavirus. I'm talking about foxitis, also known as Foxmania. Symptoms include listening to bloviating morons on cable TV and believing their every lying word, forming violent white supremacist mobs at the drop of a hat, storming the Capitol because you didn't get your way, though it could also be plain old garden variety stupidity too. Now, lest you think that Professor Truth is just doing his usual hyper-sarcastic shtick, no, my friends, you can't make this stuff up. This is Anthony Antonio. He was one of the white supremacist mob who called themselves storming the Capitol on January 6th, and of course we have to bring attention to his last name. Can't help but remind me of Henry Enrique Tarrio, the former leader of the Proud Boys. Also reminds me of Nick Fuentes, a white supremacist luminary, if I can use that word with that idiot. For all the gullible clowns out there still trying to figure out why your black-brown alliance, otherwise known as a clumsy front for trying to obtain interracial sexual access, didn't work out, this could be a small indication why. Well, Mr. Antonio has found himself in a spot of legal trouble, but that's okay. His lawyer's already thinking that his client's got the complexion for the protection, so rather than hurt himself with coming up with any real legal defense, they've decided let's go ahead and put that white privilege on full display. His lawyer is now claiming that Mr. Antonio has foxomania, i.e. foxitis. I guess he couldn't make up his mind which one. Apparently, he had watched too much Fox News. He had watched Fox News for 6 months straight, and it turned him into a raging white supremacist, hell-bent on overthrowing the government. Well, of course, as we all know, nobody becomes a radicalized right-winger because they watch Fox News. No, Fox News is the place where the radicalized right-wingers go to hang out. That's their media lounge, if you will. To say that Fox News radicalized anyone would be like saying that someone became radicalized after they joined the Ku Klux Klan. Now, this legal defense shouldn't be that outrageous, at least for those of us who understand that under white supremacy, the idea is not whether or not you can come up with some legally sound defense. The real defense is he's white, and as such, the law is not supposed to apply to him. And we need to go ahead and send a message. That's why you got all these judges at the federal level who have been saying, well, we know that all of these white supremacists tried to overthrow the government, but we're going to let all of these guys go on bail. Or we're just going to release some ROR. I mean, just because you tried to overthrow the government, that doesn't mean that you're not trustworthy. And if this asinine foxitis/foxomania defense sounds at all familiar in its ridiculousness, well, there's a reason for that. Remember Ethan Couch, this little reprobate who killed 4 people with his pickup truck? And then when he was brought to court, his attorney used the defense that he had a bad case of a made-up mental disorder called Affluenza. Why, he had so much money that there was no way that he could appreciate his actions because he had lived a life of affluence and plenty, and because of that, he just couldn't appreciate the moral dimensions of his actions. Well, after killing 4 people, as soon as Ethan Couch was out on bail for an encore, he decided to skip the country. First murder, now fugitive from justice, but that's okay. He understood that being white, the law wasn't going to punish him no matter what he did. So as soon as he got brought back to the U.S., he only did about 2 years in jail, and then after that, they let him go. That's all he gets for killing 4 people and then going on the lam. So think about that. His lawyer goes through all the trouble of coming up with some asinine, half-baked defense. Affluenza. His client decides that he's going to skip the country, and then when he comes back, the court gives him a slap on the wrist anyway. So what does that tell you? Ethan Couch got the exact same treatment with or without his defense of affluenza. But this, of course, white supremacy has a long-standing history of giving slaps on the wrist and allowing all kinds of asinine defenses for those who it classifies as white. And while we're on the subject of White, that brings us to Dan White. Dan White had been a supervisor in the city of San Francisco. That's their equivalent of a city council person. And he famously murdered the mayor of the city, Mayor Moscone, and the flamboyant, openly homosexual supervisor, Harvey Milk. They even made a movie about it. And as a result, at his trial, his lawyer put forward the now famous or infamous Twinkie defense, basically saying that old boy ate junk food, had a sugar rush, and it sent him into a murderous rage. Now, although the jury didn't let the guy off the hook totally, what the jury did was they decided that instead of convicting him of first-degree murder for what was clearly a premeditated killing, 2 premeditated killings, instead they decided to give him just voluntary manslaughter, which means he'd be a few years in the hole and then he's out. Oh, you better believe, though, that the gay community in California, you understand, whenever white supremacy feels like something happened that they didn't like, what occurs is they change some laws. In California, what they did was they got rid of the diminished capacity law. Imagine that. That's what they do whenever they feel like, ooh, that didn't quite go the way we wanted. On a side note, I do think it bears noting that after he got out of jail, just before he committed suicide, old Dan White confessed to one of the police officers who he surrendered to that he had 2 other people who he intended to kill that day. One of them was a fellow supervisor named Carol Ruth Silver, and the other was a state assemblyman by the name of Lowdown Willie Brown. Dan White had resigned his position as a San Francisco city supervisor, and apparently he changed his mind and decided he wanted his old job back, but in order to get it, he had to be reappointed by the mayor. And apparently he felt that Willie Brown and Harvey Milk, everybody was against him. That's why the mayor was looking and going, I don't know if I should give you this job back. We got other people in mind. So that's why he decided, I'm going to kill the mayor, kill Harvey Milk, and if Willie Brown's around, I'm going to kill him too. And this terrible. The point that I'm making is you didn't need to wait until he gave a confession to know that this was premeditated murder. He didn't just walk into the building blasting people. He killed 2 people in particular. He shot one on one side of the building and the other one on the other side of the building. Obviously, after he snuck into the building through a window, clearly he thought this through. But the thing is, the Twinkie defense, just like the Affluenza defense, just like Foxmania, these are all examples of flaunting white supremacy's white skin privilege, the immunity from law given to those classified as white. That's what this is really about. Because, as the comedian Paul Mooney said, they don't let black people get away with BS. You sit there and say something stupid like, I had multiple personalities, I hear voices, I got multiple personalities, and they'll tell you, well, you go ahead and choose which one's going to jail then. You sit there and try to claim, Affluenza, I had too much money to know right from wrong, and they'll tell you, well, where you're going, you'll have no money and nothing but time to ponder right from wrong. They don't let black people get away with BS defenses. Hell, most of the time they don't let us get away with legal defenses, no matter how valid. This is what goes on in the so-called courtrooms. It's not a matter of the law. It's a matter of it's already been worked out and decided who the law will apply to and who it doesn't apply to. It is not the nature of your defense that matters, it's who's being defended that truly matters. And whether or not that defense is going to stand or not has already been predetermined in advance, which is why I keep telling you that in order for black empowerment, i.e. justice, to be established, we're going to have to break the back of this wicked system, and that means forcing it to do things it wasn't designed to do. See, what it was designed to do was to persecute black people. It was designed to be nothing more than a pro forma pretend ceremony where, we're going to pretend as if we're going through the motions with you guys. See, this is going to be a little bit of judicial, political, racial theater where we pretend as if you're getting due process when we've already decided your fate before you were even charged, before the cops even ran up on you. We already decided your fate. And it doesn't matter if it's Brock Turner, Ethan Couch, Dan White, or Anthony Antonio, those verdicts have already been decided as well. Now, I posted for you a few days ago how you got the white media, CNN in particular, who's trying to make a big deal out of, oh, did you hear that one of the jurors in the Chauvin trial, he had previously had on a t-shirt that was protesting the killing of George Floyd, and because of that, could this help Chauvin's appeal? Yeah, you got the white media trying to basically act as the defense team as they were doing all throughout this. It's a matter of, okay, we got to find a way to get this thing taken back because God knows these niggers have taken way too much ground. We have to get something. We got to get something going for a counteroffensive. After all, that's our job as the white media. First thing to remember, though, is during the Cosby trial, you had a white juror who openly said that he was biased. He said that his sister or some family member had been a victim of sexual assault, allegedly. And because of that, he didn't feel that he could be an impartial juror. You even had the other jurors who ratted him out and said, hey, did you know behind closed doors this bastard said that Cosby is guilty? This before the jury had even been sent to deliberate. This is what the guy was saying during the voir dire process when they were choosing jurors. He was saying, I don't think that I can be impartial. You got the juror telling you that, and the prosecution says this guy needs to be on the jury. And the judge says, yep, he sure does. Notice how CNN didn't have anything to say about that. CNN was not opining as to, if this juror who already failed whatever questionnaires that they're supposed to have, who openly admits during the voir dire process that he is biased, who is ratted out and who is told on by the other jurors who call him out for saying that Cosby's guilty, this before he even goes to deliberate, there's no way in hell that Cosby doesn't get a mistrial. There's no way in hell that this verdict doesn't get overturned. Hell, why wasn't there a mistrial during the trial? You didn't have to wait. Don't have to wait for an appeal on this one. No, as far as they were concerned, we got to make a point, and the point is we got to get the heat off of the white guys who were doing all of this raping, pillaging, and plundering, and make sure that we make a black man the face of all of this sexual assault and rape. We got to make the black man the face of it. Yeah, we got something far worse than someone's choice of clothing apparel. Since when does somebody's choice of fashion matter to the white media? It matters when they think that they can use it in order to push an agenda that's going to be helpful and advantageous for maintaining the white supremacist status quo. Then all of a sudden, well, what kind of shirt were you wearing, buddy? Yeah, it doesn't matter if somebody admits I can't be relied on as an impartial juror. I'm biased as hell. Just another coincidental case of the law not being applied. During the Cosby trial, you didn't have to wait until the verdict had been handed down and then go digging around and see, can we find something after the fact that we can use as the basis for some half-baked appeal? They didn't have to go through all that. You had crap going down, dirt going down during the trial. Not that the white media would say anything. And just for good measure, during the Weinstein trial, you had one of the jurors, a female, who said that she was writing a book regarding men who prey on women, etc., etc. Now, that, of course, was not seen as invalidating the verdict. At least it hasn't been proven to yet. Under white supremacy, whenever someone who's classified as white puts forward a legal defense, no matter what happens at the trial, it's always presumptuous. It's always a bit too soon to say, well, surely this defense is too ridiculous to get them off, or surely no parole board or judge is going to look and decide to reverse this verdict. It's always presumptuous to say that. Now, it's not presumptuous to say that with black folks. With black people, it's a matter of, well, hell, there's no evidence against them. You got a dozen witnesses who say that this person didn't commit the crime. Oh my God, it's going to be a nail biter as to what the verdict's going to be. Earlier this evening, I posted on my Twitter feed how the Uber Karen, hell, at this point, like sour milk, she has degenerated and decayed into a full-scale Susan, but infamous, disgraced former prosecutor Linda Fairstein, who illegally prosecuted the Central Park Five, and is butthurt about the fact that her little would-be writing career has hit a couple of snags. Turns out that, as we suspected, she acted as a go-between for all sorts of unsavory characters like Harvey Weinstein. What she would do is she would arrange introductions between the legal counsels for certain people and her old pals in the Manhattan DA's sex crimes unit. She did it for Harvey Weinstein. Introduced Harvey Weinstein's lawyer to the Manhattan DA's sex crimes team. Oh yeah, that's what Linda Fairstein was doing because, she's so concerned about women being assaulted and, she's a person of such integrity. You got Harvey Weinstein, who was well known in New York, by the way, as we found out from Agent Duvernay, who ironically is being sued right now by Linda Fairstein. Agent Duvernay herself said that she had heard all the stories about Weinstein and she was still a fan. Talk about a case of no good guys here to root for. But that's what Linda Fairstein was doing. And nobody ever looked and said, come on, you're not going to tell me that you had to wait until some freaking emails surfaced. None of this crap was any sort of secret. They were doing this mess openly. Harvey Weinstein's predations were no secret at all. It was well known, especially in New York, where he did a lot of his political donating to the Clintons and other people. Folks already knew about Harvey Weinstein in LA and New York. Please don't think that Linda Fairstein, this haggard old crone, this wrinkled up racist, this bag of sour milk, and I'll bet that's how she smells too. Please don't think that she was somehow had no idea what he was up to. Of course she knew. Everybody knew. But that's the way that it works. Linda Fairstein knew exactly what her job was. Her job was to prosecute and persecute black people. That was her job. She understood that. She also understood that there are other people who white supremacy's made it very clear are off limits. You don't touch these people. And don't expect for there to be any talk about Linda Fairstein losing her law license. Don't expect any talk about her being dragged before the New York State Bar's disciplinary committee. Don't expect anything about how this woman needs to be punished, prosecuted. No, that's not what it's about. She did what white supremacy wanted her to do. And the last thing that they want is to make it where the prosecutors start thinking, man, if I go about recklessly carrying out white supremacy's dictates, I could go to prison. There's no protection or support for me. It's the same thing that goes for the thugs with badges. You don't want them being hesitant about persecuting and harming and killing black people. You want them to feel emboldened about it, that they understand I can't be touched. But now what's happening is people are touching them. And I told you that the prosecutors and judges will have to be the next ones who understand that you too can also be made to answer for your crimes. The police are not the only ones who can be brought to heel. The prosecutors and the judges can as well. Same way that you had that prosecutor, what was his name, Tom Cotton or whatever, in Minneapolis. Old boy had to sell his home and leave by dark of night. Yeah, the prosecutors and the judges who act as the support staff and the backup for the thugs with badges, what they're going to find out is if the public's not scared of the guys with guns, do you think they're quaking in their boots because of some overweight bigots with law degrees? And by the way, just for the record, all I'm doing is I'm just telling you what the mood of the street is. I'm just telling you what the climate at the grassroots is. But the reason that I bring up all of this legal feegle palaver is because I want you to understand you don't live under the rule of law. You never have. You live under white supremacy, and under white supremacy, it's all about whatever they think they can get away with, backed up through the credible threat of violence. And when you make it clear that you're not going to be a target, when you make it clear that you're going to fight back, when you make it clear that you're not just going to be a duck in a shooting gallery, then all of a sudden what happens is they got to think twice before deciding that they're going to do their go-to, we'll just call in the thugs with badges and whenever we want to get our way. They understand exactly where this mess is going if they don't get some sort of counteroffensive going. Because you know who's not talking about Foxmania or foxitis? CNN. Oh, they got plenty to say when they think that there's something that might help one of the thugs with badges, or at least lay the groundwork for that. But on the other hand, when you got something that's going to be potentially sending someone classified as white to the Hooskow, then all of a sudden CNN doesn't consider that to be very interesting at all. It shows you a lot about how they pretend as if they're so concerned about the Capitol Hill insurrection. To them, that was just another car wreck written large. If it bleeds, it leads. Please don't think that you're going to be doing anything or getting anything by following white supremacy's rules. If there's any lesson that should have been taken away from the uprisings of 2020, it's that when you're the victims of white supremacy, the targets of white supremacy, when you make it very clear that there's going to be a price to be paid for targeting you, then all of a sudden the same white supremacists who 5 seconds ago were telling you what they're not going to do, all of a sudden they're going to catch a case of act right. And it won't take 6 months of them getting their butts stomped before they decide to shape up and fly right. Won't take 6 months of that. The bad guys have organized violence on their side. We have organized righteousness and strength of will, but that means nothing if you don't stand behind it. There are a lot of people out here who are fighting against white supremacy, and we have to support them at all levels. See, the bad guys are thinking to themselves that you're going to play the game by their rules, and as long as you do, you're going to continue losing. We are not concerned with whatever defenses white supremacy thinks it's going to bring. That's why the thugs with badges thought to themselves they were going to get away with that mess of, I was scared for you. Ain't heard nobody talk that mess anymore, now have you? Yeah, once they understand that that's not going to fly, that the people are not going to stand for that, then all of a sudden their lawyers are like, we may not want to try that. You may not want to. It's amazing what can be accomplished when you're not trying to go to the hand-picked, controlled opposition the white supremacy puts in there. When you're not waiting to see if the state bar is going to do their freaking jobs, when you already know that they've made up their minds, as long as the prosecutors are attacking you, that's okay. And as long as the judges are persecuting you and breaking the law, putting huge sentences on you, or just deciding that they're going to use their position in the courtroom to say, you're in contempt for what? Well, you walked in the courtroom. That's why. I'm the defendant. Well, you shouldn't have come in the courtroom. As long as they understand that there's no penalty to be paid for that, then of course they will. But when the people make it very clear, you know what? Forget about whatever rules you put on the books. You got a whole dust up going on right now. Half of it phony, half of it genuine, with the white media making a big deal about election laws in Florida and other places. And while it is true that these laws are being aimed at black people, the truth of the matter happens to be, as I keep pointing out to you, if black folks really want something, I mean for real, want something, there ain't no group of pasty white supremacists in any state legislature or even the U.S. Congress who can pass a law that's going to stop us from getting it. Some of the pot-smoking, brain-dead ADHD half-wits in the comment sections who think themselves smart when they're really about as smart as a half-eaten cantaloupe. These clowns will be the first ones to say, well, y'all can't do what them white folks do, expect the same result in the courts. That's the reason why nobody is stupid. The white supremacists are not relying on law. They understand that their skin color, that is the totality of the law. And what I need black people to understand is that the only true law is what people are willing to obey. And that when enough people make it very clear, you know what, we don't have any regard for the words on the page or the individuals who claim to be administering the law, because it's obvious that they're racist and it's obvious that this is nothing more than a clumsy front for a black persecution machine, and that we're not going along with it, then what's going to happen is you have caused a crisis. A crisis that this wicked white supremacist construct is not prepared to have to try to fight. It is prepared to brutalize you into submission. It is prepared for you to become apathetic and walk away because we keep doing it over and over again. It is prepared for you to blow off some steam and become bored. It is prepared for you to go to whomever the Negro flunky is the white supremacy put in front of you, whether it be Messy Jesse or whether it be Stacey Abrams. It's prepared for you to do that because that's what you're supposed to do. But white supremacy does not have a contingency for when you decide that you're going to do what you have to do, as opposed to what you're supposed to do. Because white supremacy knows that it has assigned you your role in society. You've heard of gender roles, but there's also racial roles in the society too, and white supremacy has assigned black folks our racial role. But what happens when black folks decide to flip the script? The courts are a sham and a fraud. We all should know that. Reminds me of the line from that movie Primal Fear that if you want justice, go to a whorehouse. If you want to get screwed, go to court. The movie attributed that quote to Thomas Jefferson. At least it was supposed to be a paraphrasing of one of his little idiocies. I dare not call them witticisms. Whether that's true or not is irrelevant. The point of the matter is it does speak to a broader truth, which is, the courtrooms are largely just places where the people who have the money, the influence, or the right skin color are immune from law. It's just a place where the society treats it as a dustbin for the occasional administrative headaches that go along with due process. Some person who white supremacy is classified as white has broken the law. It's pretty obvious they have. Well, we need a framework for how he's not going to be touched, so we can at least say, okay, we got a process for it. We didn't just do nothing. And it's also meant to give a framework for how black people are going to also be persecuted under color of law. I don't want you to have any respect for white supremacy or its institutions. You must have nothing but utter disrespect and contempt for them. Because when you have contempt for an institution, you can do anything to it. You can ignore it. You can attack it. Hell, you can destroy it. And if anyone asks why you did it, hell, tell them I had a case of foxitis or foxmania. And when they look and say, well, wait a minute, doesn't foxmania mean, well, what it means is I listened to Fox News for 6 minutes and I decided I couldn't take this white supremacist crap anymore and it just drove me over the edge. Yeah, that's the black man's version of foxitis. You listen to that crap for 6 minutes and you're ready for a revolution. The bad guys make no apologies whatsoever for flaunting the fact that their system is so corrupt, so irredeemably racist, that they just tell you to your face, oh man, I can just walk in there and say, why did I do it? Twinkies, I ate too much junk food. Why'd you do it? I got too much money. That's why you can't put me in jail. Oh, I watched too much Fox News. They're just flaunting it, throwing in your face that, yeah, this system's not going to touch us because we know it. We know it was constructed that way. Yeah, that's one of the perks that white supremacy has given to us. It ain't about the law. It's about what we've decided amongst ourselves. They don't have the slightest shred of embarrassment or remorse or self-consciousness about it. And so you should not have the slightest bit of self-consciousness or remorse about resisting such a wicked, evil, sick system.